Hello everyone, I'm Riya Gandhi. Welcome back to my channel. The UGC NET English exam of June 2025 has just passed, and it was quite a shocker for a lot of students. Like, it did not just catch them off guard, like a lot of students genuinely felt like the paper was speaking in different languages. In the sense that the questions were so out of the place, completely new question formats in the sense that there were more context heavy, statement based questions, right? And as I've mentioned in my previous video as well, I believe that this pattern is going to continue for the next cycles as well, right? So there will be more importance given to research and literary theories, especially in UGC NET English. But this time, there were certain terms, concepts that the students weren't prepared for as of yet. Terms like Ontotheology, right? So these questions are quite interdisciplinary. So I thought let's create a video on such important terms so that you could be prepared for your next cycle as well. So let's decode 5 most important terms that were asked in UGC NET English exam June 2025 one by one. First concept that we are going to talk about in this video is Panopticism. So when I'm talking about Panopticism, the term was developed by Michel Foucault, who was a French philosopher, and he's quite often associated by his ideas on power and how power is circulated in society through knowledge. So when he was talking about Panopticism, which he did in one of his most famous works, which is Discipline and Punish, he was actually also talking about the concepts of discipline, surveillance, and self-regulation. Now let's break this down in a very simple manner, right? So when I'm talking about Panopticism, it derived from a prison architecture called as Panopticon, right? So it's a prison design that was actually proposed by Jeremy Bentham in 18th century. Right? So what is Panopticon? Okay, now imagine that there is a prison, but it is designed in a very circular format, right? So it's a circular prison, and in the middle of this prison, there's this huge tower, right? Now, the idea is that there is one guard, right? There is this one guard standing in the tower, and he is able to look at all the prisons, right, around that particular tower. But the catch is that the prisoners who are locked inside their prisons, basically, who are locked behind the bars, they can't see the guard. Right? So they are not sure if they are being watched or not. But the very idea, right, that there is a guard in the tower who might be watching them sort of acts as a way for them to discipline themselves. This is basically the heart of Panopticism. The belief that you are being watched makes you discipline yourself even without an external force, right? So the idea of Michel Foucault talking about Panopticism was that he believed that it's not just restricted to prisons. It's not just restricted to prisoners behind the bars. It's sort of like spreads to schools, hospitals, offices, even today's like digital platforms, right? So he talks about how this idea of Panopticism becomes like a discipline mechanism where the control, where power is something that is exerted not in a very, direct manner, that I will beat you, I'll thrash you. No, it's not exerted in that particular manner. It's more subtle, right? And the idea behind Panopticism is just one, to produce individuals who can monitor themselves, right? And the best example in literature that I can give you right now of Panopticism is basically George Orwell's 1984. right? The idea that the big brother is watching you, right? This is something that is very prevalent with the televisions watching the characters, where the characters' every action is very measured, it's very controlled, it's very disciplined. This is basically Panopticism, right? So when we talk about June 2025 paper, there were, I think, 2 questions that were asked on Panopticism. And if I am not wrong, I think there was a question asked about Panopticon or Panopticism in December 2023 paper as well. Right, so I think that Michel Foucault's concepts, not just Panopticon or Panopticism, they are frequently asked in UGC NET English exam. So make sure that when you prepare for your December 2025 paper, you look out for Michel Foucault's concepts thoroughly and his works thoroughly, right? Having said that, let's move on to the next most important term that was asked in June 2025 paper. The second most important term, or I should say a pair of terms that was asked in this year's paper, were Pidgin and Creole. Now, Pidgin and Creole, they are linguistic terms, but in order to understand them, you also need to have a bit of a cultural context, right? So Pidgin and Creole, they are kind of languages called as contact languages. Now, what are contact languages? So contact languages are basically the kind of languages that emerge when people from different linguistic backgrounds need a way to communicate with each other because of trade, because of colonialism, or some or the other reason, right? So Pidgin and Creole are these kind of languages. They are contact languages, but there is a slight difference between the two. Right? So when I'm talking about Pidgin language, or Pidgin basically, it's not native to anyone, as I've mentioned before as well. It's a language which is created out of necessity to bridge those communication gaps. Now, when you talk about like Pidgin, it has a very limited vocabulary with it, basic grammar, right? And they are used in this context of trade. If I want to do trade with another person belonging to another country, but I don't know their language and they don't know my language, we will create another language, right? So this is what Pidgin is. Now, what is Creole? Creole, on the other hand, begins when a pidgin evolves, right? So basically, when a pidgin becomes native to a community, in the sense that pidgin becomes the first language for a community, when children start learning it at their home, that is Creole, right? It has more complex grammar, it has a larger vocabulary, it becomes very stable, and it becomes a part of one of the fully developed languages. So when I'm talking about the key differences between Pidgin and Creole, Pidgin does not have any native speakers. It is created for a very short period of time to basically bridge those communication gaps. But when that pidgin is adopted by a certain community, it becomes a part of their language. It becomes, that's how and that's what they use to communicate with other people at their home, becomes their first language. That is Creole, right? Creole is more stable, right? It's more community owned. Pidgins are temporary, they are basic, they are functional, right? So this is the basic difference between Pidgin and Creole. The third most important concept that was asked in UGC NET English exam was Erziehungsroman. You have probably heard of Bildungsroman, which is like the coming of age novel talking about the psychological development and basically the development of a character, the maturity of the character and how it develops. Then there is Consoleroman, which is the development of an artist, right? Through trials and tribulations, through experiences in their life. And then there is Erziehungsroman, which was asked this time. So Erziehungsroman is a German term which also refers to a novel of education or a novel of training. It talks about, again, the development of the characters, their moral and psychological development, but the focus over here is more on their education. So it basically talks about and highlights their formal education, instruction, training, and how that primarily shapes the character. It's basically considered to be how they grow up through school and the kind of experiences, learning experiences that they have through trials and tribulations. So for example, you have Charles Dickens's David Copperfield and Great Expectations, which have strong Erziehungsroman elements in it. You also have Harry Potter. If you think about it, it fits the model at some point, right? Because Hogwarts doesn't just become like a setting. It becomes like a moral training ground for Harry. Having said that, now let's move on to the fourth most important concept that was asked in this year's paper, and that is Ontotheology. Right? So this was a very philosophical, more abstract concept which was asked in the exam. But to understand this, let's break this word down. So in order to understand this concept, you also need to understand that it's like a blend of two philosophical terms, or two branches of philosophy rather. The first one is ontology and the second one is theology. Ontology basically means the study of being, in the sense the study of existence, how we exist, right? The reason behind our existence and our reality. That is ontology. Theology is basically the study of God, right? The existence of God. And when you mix these two branches of philosophy, you get ontotheology. And it basically means that it is the study. Ontotheology is the idea or the study of understanding God by using philosophical tools, right? And treating God as like the ultimate being, right? Proving God's existence in our life and through logic, through reason. Now, this term was first coined by Immanuel Kant, who was a critique of theology, and he felt like the philosophers, they sort of relied too much on abstract concepts and reasoning to prove God's existence, instead of just talking about faith and experience. Because when you talk about the presence of God in your life, it's more of a personal experience, right? It depends on your faith. It depends on the kind of experiences that you have. But expanding on this idea, you have Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger said that when you talk about Western philosophy, God is not just a religious figure, but God is also this metaphysical principle, right? God is like this explanation behind why we exist. So it is a bit complicated to understand the theories and to understand the ideas that were proposed both by Kant and Heidegger. But understand that the reason why this question was asked in your UGC NET English exam was they were not just testing theology, right? They are also trying to test how well you understand Western metaphysics and how Western metaphysics has also shaped literary and philosophical thought, right? So again, a very, very interesting question if you think from that perspective. Having said that, finally, let's move on to the last and the most important concept that is kind of repeatedly asked in UGC NET English exam, and that is Chronotope. Chronotope was one of the popular terms that was provided by Mikhail Bakhtin, a Russian literary theorist. It is basically a mixture of two Greek words, chronos and topos. Chronos basically means time, topos basically means space. So chronotope basically refers to how time and space both are interconnected in a story, how a narrative is shaped by when and where it happens. For example, when you talk about an epic like the Odyssey, time is stretched, right? It happens over a very long period of time. The space is vast because it's an epic, because it talks about a heroic journey. However, if you talk about Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, time is very non-linear. It's back and forth, talking about the fleeting nature of thoughts in Mrs. Dalloway's mind, right? At the same time, if you talk about a realist novel like Pride and Prejudice, time is more linear, space is more domestic, talking about the characters' mindsets in the sense that how characters like Lizzie, they are very much present in their surroundings and they try to deal with their reality head on, right? So by putting this question in this 2025 paper, I believe they wanted to create more theory based, right, more interpretation based format, and they want to move from, and they want to shift their question pattern from factual questions to more conceptual questions. So it is very important to know such kind of terms. If you want to know more about Mikhail Bakhtin's terms like Chronotope, I've already made a video on Mikhail Bakhtin's most important terms, so make sure you watch that out as well, right? So with that, we now come to an end of our video. So let's just do a quick recap of all the important terms that we discussed in this video, starting with Panopticism. So when we talk about Panopticism, it's basically surveillance as a form of control, trying to establish that kind of self-discipline amongst the individuals. Second, Pidgin and Creole, the two kinds of contact languages which have evolved in the colonial, right, and the post-colonial settings. Then you have Erziehungsroman, which talks about the development of a character in terms of their education, their training. It's a novel of education, right? Then you have Ontotheology, which talks about the merging of theology and ontology and the study of existence of God, right? Then you talk about Chronotope, which is how time and space create and play a significant role in a narrative, right? So with this, we now come to an end of our video. If these terms sort of like surprised you in your June 2025 exam, then understand that you are not alone. But also understand and expect that such kind of questions may come in the next cycle, that is in December 2025 as well. So it's very essential to prepare yourself accordingly, right? Going forward, we are going to expand the way we study. Going forward, I'm going to create videos in this format only, wherein I'll be explaining such concept heavy terms to you, or in the sense simplifying the literary theories for you. And yes, in between I'll also be putting videos of British literature and Indian English literature as well, right? So keep building this conceptual clarity, revisit the original theorists whenever you can, and yes, prepare yourself as soon as you can, in the sense start preparing as soon as you can, right? So don't wait till the last minute, don't wait anymore, right? If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below and I'll be very happy to help you. If you found this video informative and helpful, please like, share and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments which of these concepts confused you the most in the exam. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end, guys. I'll see you in the next one.